Hello, my name is Dr. Scott Young, and today I want to talk to you about my book, The Professor in History, coming right up. So let me go backward on this book because this book sat in my heart deep for a long time. Actually, I wrote it as a short story very long time ago, 20, 30 years ago. What I wanted to share is an atheistic professor. His name is Matthew Chadwick, and he's an archaeology professor who believes in past lives. And I've met so many of them. And I put him at my old alma mater. One of my alma maters is University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, Colorado. So I put him there, and I wanted him to have this viewpoint of past lives. As he's grading papers later on, he goes back in time and he finds Jesus. The way that he finds Jesus and the interactions are very unique. Instead of bringing scripture up when he talks to Jesus, when Matthew understands the language, because he's an archaeologist, he knows those languages. As he studies those languages and he starts to understand what Jesus is talking about, he realizes fascinating ideas he could never imagine. He starts to realize that this isn't a crazy wacko that he would have thought. Some people say, that Jesus, he makes all these claims and they say he must have been a great teacher. But there's a common statement that's said out there. He's either a liar, a lunatic, or the Lord. Let me just explain that a little bit. He either is a liar, which means that he says so many powerful things about himself that he's either lying, a lunatic, meaning he's psychotic and he doesn't really understand what he's saying, so he's not in control of his faculties, which doesn't really line up, or he is the Lord because he makes conversations about himself that he's sitting at the right hand of the Father, that he is going to judge the world, that angels attend him, that when he dies, he is able to come back and rebuild this temple. He makes amazing, fascinating conversations, that he can conquer death. You see, you can't call him just a great teacher because he'd be a liar if you don't believe what he said. So he is either that liar, the lunatic, or the Lord. And inside of the book, we go through the death and resurrection of Jesus. It's one of those fascinating topics that I've studied for more than 35 years. And looking at John, specifically John 19, verse 31 through 37, that I can conclusively prove that Jesus actually did die. Now, who didn't believe that? Let me just kind of give you that idea. Do you know that the Muslims believed that Jesus didn't really die on the cross, but it was another guy? And yet, John is talking to Jesus in chapter 19, and Jesus is dying of dehydration. If you're dying of dehydration, would you be talking more like this? You'd be talking with a tiny voice and over a whisper. That means that he would be less than a few feet away, 10 feet away maybe. In that same instance that we see other groups of people, the Essenes, which is the progenitor of the New Age movement, said that he was really a spirit. Well, how does a spirit bleed? See, that doesn't fit either. So some people want to say, and especially the Romantic era, had an idea that Jesus was really in a coma. And that's where Matthew comes with this, The professor thinks that Jesus is in the coma. What does Jesus do? Let me just share with you this idea. If Jesus is in a coma and just pushes away the stone, as some have postulated, like D.H. Lawrence in The Man Who Died, it's an 80-page novel. I don't really recommend you read it, but you'll get the idea of what they actually believed. Jesus, if Jesus didn't die, then he was just in a coma, and yet they pierce into his heart, into bursa sac, into the pericardial sac. He's into the heart cavity, and blood and water flows. That is a type of understanding of plasma. When plasma separates, when the blood separates when you're dead for more than 3 minutes, it'll separate into two components, a red blood cells and the clear fluid, which is plasma. In the Bible, it indicates plasma. Before Dr. Charles Drew ever discovered it in the 1920s and 30s. Dr. Charles Drew was trying to figure out how, after World War I, could we have people on the battlefield be saved through surgery. You couldn't just take the blood out of a person and pump it into someone else. Really, you had to do it very quickly. But if you kept the blood, it would spoil and separate into its components. And he was trying to figure out how to do that. And he developed plasma that in World War II we started to use a little, and then we used it much more in the Korean War and the Vietnam War and other kinds of wars after that. So plasma is a powerful understanding, and it's inside of this book. So I think if you read this book, you'll have a unique viewpoint of maybe some of the things that Jesus was trying to say. And he's saying it through the characters that are within. So if you're interested in that book, you can see it at my website, drscottyoung.com. You can subscribe here, learn a lot about the truth of the Word. Thank you so much.